right, Jim. Jim's next about interventions. So, floor is yours.
Yes, I will start sharing my screen. Let's see. So there we go. Yeah, good morning or afternoon for us. My name is Jim Schiks, and I am a junior researcher for both the NSCR, which is a Dutch Criminological Research Institute, and for the Eke University of Applied Sciences. And during this presentation, I will share with you two studies that I conducted together with my colleagues. And those studies focus on cybercrime interventions in the Netherlands. And together with Rutger Leukveld and Suzanne van Toft de Goede, we investigated the cybercrime intervention HackRight. And together with Rutger and Remco Spithoven and his colleagues from Saxion, University of Applied Sciences, we conducted a study about the intervention HackShield. So first, I will shortly give some context of this research, because as we know from previous studies, cybercrime has not only international dimensions with international offenders that make victims in countries such as the Netherlands, but there are also local cybercrime offenders who make victims in the Netherlands as well. However, we know from recent literature overviews that there's little knowledge about effective cybercrime interventions that can be applied in order to reduce cybercrime. Because there are simply few empirical studies that have been measuring these effects of different cybercrime interventions. Well, despite this lack of empirical research, there are many initiatives popping up in the Netherlands. Two of them have been investigated by us, as I mentioned, and those are HackRight and HackShield. So what are these interventions? Well, HackRight is an intervention that has been developed by the Police and Public Prosecution Service in the Netherlands. And it can be defined as an alternative or additional criminal procedures for young cybercrime offenders that committed their first cybercrime offense. The aim of this intervention is to prevent recidivism and also to develop IT talents of these youngsters in a legal manner. And how is this done? Well, during this intervention, the youngsters are sent to cybersecurity organizations, and there they have to make assignments and reflect on the crime that they committed. The other intervention is HackShield, and HackShield is an intervention that is it's a project that is both initiated by municipalities in the North Holland, a province in the Netherlands, together with HackShield. So this is a public-private partnership, because HackShield is a private organization that developed a cybersecurity game called HackShield for children between 8 and 12 years old. And the aim of this game and this project is to make children and their immediate environment, parents and grandparents of the children, more cyber resilient. And how is this done? Well, the project consists of the cybersecurity game, and this cybersecurity game is kind of promoted by municipalities, because those municipalities, they call on children to play this game, and if they and the top players of within the municipality, they get honored by the mayor and a police officer. So that is what the interventions are about. So to put these interventions into a bit more context, we know that there are 3 different types of prevention strategies that can be distinguished. First, there are primary prevention strategies. Those strategies are aimed at the general population of potential perpetrators or victims. And HackShield is a typical example of primary prevention, which is aimed at a broader public, all children in a certain municipality. And we also have secondary prevention strategies. Those are aimed at groups who are at risk of becoming a perpetrator or a victim. And then you can think of vulnerable elderly that are at risk of becoming a victim, but also you can think about youngsters in a vulnerable neighborhood who are more at risk to get involved in crime. Last, there's tertiary prevention, and this is aimed at people who already became a victim or already committed an offense. And HackRight is a typical tertiary prevention strategy. So what did we do during our research? We evaluated those interventions by addressing two research topics. First, we looked at we investigated the program theory of these interventions. So we looked at, for example, what are the goals of this intervention? What is the target group that it is aimed at? But also what are underlying assumptions or theories that are associated with this intervention. Second, we investigated how this program has been implemented in practice, and therefore we looked at the first pilots that have been carried out for both HackRight and HackShield. We used two qualitative research methods to address these research topics. First, we used a document analysis in which we took a look at the different project plans of these interventions. And second, we conducted interviews for both interventions with program developers, so the people who initiated the project and wrote the project plans, in order to explicate what their intentions were with this intervention. Second, for HackRight, we also interviewed imposers. So those are people from the public prosecution service that impose HackRight upon a suspect of cybercrime. And we also interviewed a lot of implementers. So those are the people who actually execute the intervention. And last but not least, we also interviewed the participants of these interventions. We interviewed 10 participants for HackRight and 19 participants with their parents for the intervention HackShield. So these are the methods that we used. And well, both studies have been completed, but unfortunately, I can only share some of our most important results due to the limited time that we have. But regard to HackRight, it is first important to consider that HackRight is an alternative or additional procedure that is embedded in the Dutch criminal justice system. For example, minors can participate in this intervention through a halt penalty, which is a penalty that prevents youngsters from getting a criminal record. But also adults can participate in HackRight. For example, under supervision of probation service as part of a community service. And these different punishment possibilities, they create different ways in which HackRight can be executed. And we found during our research that this also causes different views among different respondents about the meaning and the goals of HackRight. For example, there was no consensus about whether this whether HackRight should have a punishment component in its program. Second, it turned out that this intervention, HackRight, is still in development. Because according to the plans, HackRight should consist of 4 different modules that address specific criminogenic needs. An example is the training module, where participants learn ethical and juridical boundaries of hacking. But besides that, there is a lack of a strong empirical base for criminogenic needs for cybercrime offenders in the literature. Some of these modules that they developed were not yet developed during our research. So participants participated without modules being fully completed. For example, there we go. That was one sheet too soon. What we found in practice is that the activities that these participants carried out, that they really differ for each participant. For example, there have been participants that have interviewed employees of a cybersecurity company. There were participants that did assignments during 2 days, but there were also participants that worked on a project for a few months at the cybersecurity company. And this variety of different activities make it in the end, for example, for an effective evaluation, very hard to identify which mechanisms based upon these activities are activated in different contexts. And yeah, in this way you can't really find out how this in the end will lead to intended or unintended consequences. Yeah, and in addition to the lack of an empirical base for criminogenic needs of cybercrime offenders, one of the reasons why the program developers started this intervention was because they observed the difference between traditional and cybercrime offenders. However, just as it is for the criminogenic needs of cybercrime offenders, the scientific base for this this assumption it's largely lacking. So more research in this area is needed to see whether these assumptions in the end are valid, whether there are indeed so much differences between those two type of offenders. Last, what we found out was that most of the implementers were satisfied with the conduct of their HackRight pilots, because the participants successfully completed the intervention, or because they learned about ethical hacking and ended up with a job or an internship at the company where they had this intervention. However, when we asked the participants themselves, they were a lot more critical, as some of them pointed out that there was no clear program, or that the assignments that they had to complete, that they were too easy for them. Yeah, so let's continue to the results of HackShield. What's interesting is what we found is that HackShield is both a game, a project, and a social movement. Why? Well, first of all, HackShield is this game with different levels and quests in which children learn about specific cybersecurity topics, such as things about data, about phishing, the need for strong passwords. So during this game, the children also need to transfer their knowledge to their parents and grandparents through different exercises. But as I mentioned, there's also this project in which municipalities call on children to play this game and to become a cyber agent of their municipality. And the best players will get honored by the mayor, as I mentioned before. And different channels are being used by these municipalities to reach out to these children. For example, they use local police officers, youth workers, and also schools in order to reach out to these children. Well, this immediately makes HackShield, as the intervention developers also mentioned, it makes it a kind of a social movement in which all kinds of institutes and groups are activated around this topic of cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And this is also in line with some of the recent literature that suggests that the power of local reputation of professionals to reach out to specific target groups can be used to address specific security problems. Well, second, what we found out is that there's an online platform for municipalities with instructions on how they can implement this intervention within their municipalities. And respondents indicated that they were happy with these instructions, as this provided for them a way to address cybercrime without putting much effort in it. Last, we asked children whether and what they have learned from playing HackShield. And it was interesting that all participants mentioned that they have learned something, especially how to recognize phishing emails, the importance of a strong password, and they learned about hacking, what hacking is, and how it can be prevented. However, of course, an effect evaluation is needed to further confirm these results. But at least the infrastructure of this game provides nice opportunities to measure, for example, the knowledge that the children have before they enter this game and after they play this game. Well, as I mentioned, I couldn't share all of our findings, so there's some further reading. The report about HackRight is already published. You can find it online with an English summary, and the other report about HackShield will be published within a few weeks, we expect. And if you have further questions, you feel free to contact me. So yeah, this was my presentation.